Hello one and all, this is Soulful Lordy, James Bullock, once again with another video game first impressions. This time around, Dragon Gaiden, Rise of the Dragons, for the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S, Nintendo Switch, and PC. As expected from a Double Dragon game, Gaiden is a reboot of the side-scrolling beat-em-up that we've come to know and to a certain extent love, depending on how old you are, from the 1980s and 1990s on the NES, SNES, and of course the arcade. And Gaiden doesn't try to mix things up a lot, but it does add to the not only gameplay that is usually associated with not only Double Dragon but also the genre in general, but also tries to mix things up in terms of how to get players to replay the game over and over again, because I will tell you from the onset, this is a relatively short game if you're just playing it one time over. But that's not what's meant to be done, because there are certain incentives to play the game multiple times beyond the fact that you have 4 playable characters initially, be it Jimmy and Billy Lee, the brothers that we've known for all these years as the Double Dragon brothers, the hard-hitting soldier Uncle Madden, and this new character Marion, who actually utilizes a gun. And all of these characters have specific special abilities that are not only associated with hitting the button and the analog stick or the directional pad in a certain direction, but also the triggers if you're playing with a console controller. And depending on what direction you utilize or what button you utilize, they will have different special attacks that really differentiates them from each other, beyond the fact that every character has a base combo. And this is one of the things I didn't notice when I was playing it, is the fact that there is a pause between the combos. You can't just spam the same combo over and over again. If you're not careful, you will easily get hit because there is a break in everything that the protagonists do on the battlefield, be it jumping, be it of course utilizing those combos or their special attacks that may leave them open for a counterattack. Now, one of the more interesting aspects, either if you're playing with a friend offline, because there unfortunately is no online component thus far, as this is essentially a tag team affair, you're able to utilize your special bar in the middle of battle to switch characters. At the beginning of a playthrough, you're able to pick a primary character and a secondary character. And if you have a full special bar, when you're in the middle of a battle, when you're in the middle of a stage, you're able to switch that character out for the character that is the secondary character, or vice versa. Now, for the character that is switched out, they're able to actually restore some of their health depending on how much damage they took before they were switched out. And this allows for players to figure out what teammates allow for certain characters to fill in the gaps when it comes to their weaknesses. Do you have a brawler or a grappler as one of your characters? Or maybe you want to have Marion as your secondary character or your primary character, because when it comes to long range attack, you may need that character more than you need, say, a grappler. One thing that must be noted about the gameplay though is the health restorative items that only comes about with crowd control. Now, crowd control is the act of knocking out enemies, at least 3 or more at a time. So if you're able to knock out, say, 3 enemies, you're able to get a hot dog, 4 enemies a hamburger, 5 or more a turkey, and the turkey is the one that gives you the most health replenished. So it is imperative that you try to knock out as many enemies as possible, because if they gang up on you, they can hit you and juggle you and knock out a lot of health. And if you're not careful, or don't have a health restorative item, or don't have the special ready that you can switch out to your other character, it could mean game over for that character. And of course, if the other character has been knocked out, it's game over completely. Now, the story is a big part of what is one of the most interesting implementations in this game. New York has been hit by a nuclear attack. It's pretty much a barren wasteland now that is run by gangs, and it's up to the players to disperse of these gangs. Now, just like Mega Man and certain other games of the genre, you're able to take on specific gangs whatever you want to, but depending on when you face that gang will determine how grandiose that stage is that you have to go through. So for example, the first stage you take on the killers, and you will find that you only have to go through 1 stage before you go and fight the boss. But the next stage is 2 stages, and it increases until you get to the final gang, where you have a 4-stage section. And depending on your difficulty settings, which is something I will definitely talk about in a few minutes, that by the end of the game you will be put to the test like never before, because not only are the stages more unpredictable, but you will have a plethora of enemies from across every gang coming after you. So this of course adds incentive to the player to play through the game at least 4 different times, so you can see what each gang provides at a specific level, especially the highest level. Now, going back to what I said about the difficulty, before you begin story mode, you're given the chance to adjust the difficulty settings in various forms. That you have several difficulty options that are rooted in both cash and tokens. Now, cash is what you get as you play throughout the game, be it beating up enemies or knocking over, say, barrels or tires. That allows for you to spend this cash to upgrade each character as you progress throughout a playthrough. So for example, at the end of a stage, you may have the opportunity to upgrade the attack power of a combo, or the basic combo, or you may make it cost less to utilize special attacks. Tokens, however, are these rare items that can be used in the main menu, and this is one of the biggest things to keep players coming back for more, because utilizing tokens, you're able to unlock certain things, be it music, be it art, be it tips to play the game, which are pretty useless if you've already started playing the game and you learn a lot of these tips as you play without the necessity of spending tokens. But the main reason you want to get these tokens is to unlock more characters, including the bosses that you fight in this game. Depending on how much you change the difficulty, if you make it as hard as possible, it will cost less to get those tokens. But if you make it as easy as possible, it will cost more. It will also change the cost of, say, reviving your characters. If you make it easier, it costs more cash. But if you make it harder, it costs less cash. Same thing if you make sure that the player health is low, or you make that the enemies are more aggressive. The harder you make the game on yourself, the less money you have to spend. There is of course the risk and reward, because if you're playing the game on the hardest difficulty and you continuously die, you will not have enough money to revive your character. And considering the roguelike nature of this game, where they give you a checkpoint, but it's not really a checkpoint, you do not get these checkpoints in between stages as well as you would expect. There are no mid-stage checkpoints or save slots. So you have to bear in mind that there is a potential of losing everything if you're not careful, if you try to play this at the highest difficulty. And that is definitely something that you have to be mindful of depending on when you fight certain bosses, because they are easily the most frustrating aspect about the gameplay, because they can be just incredibly fast, especially compared to your movement speed, no matter what character you play as, and you really have a hard time taking advantage of counters and learning their patterns because of how fast they can be. Some characters can even teleport, and depending on what stage you're playing on, you may have a hard time trying to chase them and maybe even fall off a ledge and lose a significant amount of health. Technically, I didn't have any major problems. There are always these issues with side-scrolling beat-em-ups when it comes to lining up your character to defend or be offensive that sometimes you just can't help. But overall, I haven't had any general technical problems. Overall, Double Dragon Gaiden stays safe, plays it safe, but also does things a little bit different compared to the previous games, while unfortunately not having, say, an online mode to play with your friends like other side-scrolling beat-em-ups of the last few years have had. But it does give you a lot of variety, a lot of options when it comes to the difficulty, when it comes to enemy variation, when it comes to the ability to pull off certain combos, and most importantly, when it comes to unlocking characters, because it is incentivized that you play this game multiple times if you want to really get the full experience. But the question is, will you feel like getting that full experience? And thankfully the game is not full price. It's only set at $25 depending on what system you're playing it on. So it's really a bargain bin purchase to a certain extent. That to me makes it feel a lot more worth it than it would if it was, say, $40 or $60. If you're a fan of the old school side-scrolling beat 'em ups, I definitely say check this out. You can get a digital or physical copy, thankfully, so you have the options. But if you feel that you're kind of burned out on the genre, or you are looking for something a little bit different when it comes to the genre, Gaiden doesn't really give you that much. It's just a solid side-scrolling beat 'em up. Or if you wanted to play this game online with your friends, it's unfortunate that you will not have that opportunity thus far. Maybe that changes in the future, But if it doesn't, that's a big knock on this game, because that means you only can play with someone locally. So there you have it. This has been Soulful Lordy, James Bullock, once again with another video game first impressions. Double Dragon Gaiden, Rise of the Dragons, for the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S, Nintendo Switch, and PC. Now if you don't mind, I had to go back to the junkyard and figure out how in the world I'm going to beat this boss, make sure I hit my special, and make all of these nefarious criminals say, "Oh Lordy!"